Football's festive season continues on ITV shortly. Manchester United against Queen's Park Rangers, plus all the goals from the New Year's Day First Division programme. Live from Old Trafford.
Come on and nutritize your body. Come on and nutritize your mind. What you got to do is nutritize your habits, and the you want to be will be much easier to find.
It's our special pre-Christmas offer. 3 weeks on the Nutri-System course for £39. So look good for parties this Christmas. Call now on 0800 15 20 20.
Do it all.
Do it all.
Double discount sale.
Double discount sale.
20% off everything.
20% off everything.
Plus a free £5 gift voucher.
A free £5 gift voucher.
For every £25 you spend.
For every £25 you spend.
Don't miss the double discount sale at Do It All.
Don't miss the double discount sale at Do It All.
I just said that.
I just said that.
It's down at Do It All. Why aren't you?
You know I'm waiting, just anticipating things I may never possess. But while I'm without them,
Bounty, the taste of paradise.
The minute I first set eyes on her, I knew. After 2 minutes in the jeweller's shop, I knew. And when she was not absolutely sure, but I knew. Or I thought I knew. I knew. 2 buggies, 2 trikes, 2 bikes, 1 school, twice. So the night she said, do you think we should maybe, you know? I knew.
If you're in the know, if you know that taking care of life's expenses depends on careful saving and investment, you're in the Norwich.
Low-fat instant Horlicks, the natural way to relax.
At Sharp, when we make a camcorder, it's simple enough for everyone to use. In fact, we only ever put more advanced features in, so you'll get more fun out. The extremely low-light shooting facility in this model, for instance, with the most powerful optical zoom lens and a brilliant colour viewfinder. They're the sort of features that make a lot of sense, even when nothing else does. For camcorders and Nikam stereo video recorders, Sharp makes sense.
come on and fill my cup, let it overflow. I fill my cup, yeah. Fill my cup, fill it up, let it overflow. I fill my cup, yeah. Fill my cup. Woo!
4 million sweetened with Sweetex.
This New Year's Day on Thames, watch out for the return of that scourge of blue three-wheelers everywhere. The one and only Mr. Bean. Join him at the dentist. And on a particularly violent picnic. That's the trouble with Mr. Bean. Catch up with him on Thames tonight at 8.
This is Thames Television. It's 4:40, and we now go over to ITN for the latest news.
The news from ITN.
Man who stabbed wife to death dies in crash which kills 3 others. The man attacked his estranged wife after turning up at a family party in a boarding house in Llandudno late last night. The woman's sister was seriously injured too. As the man drove away, his car hit another at Tallacavan with 3 men inside. All 4 were killed.
A family party was in full swing at the Clavelli guest house in Llandudno when the landlady's estranged husband arrived and launched a ferocious knife attack. Despite the frantic efforts of other partygoers, the landlady herself was killed and 5 other people were wounded. The dead woman's father and sister are still in hospital, the sister critically ill. Police immediately launched a murder inquiry and began a search for the killer. But half an hour later, he too was dead, along with 3 other local men. As the knifeman fled south down the Conwy Valley, his marina estate smashed head-on into a Mini at Tallacavan. The occupants of the Mini are thought to have been killed instantly. The marina driver died a short time later. In Llandudno today, the family guest house was deserted. The landlady's shoes still lay where she kicked them off as she fled. A receptionist from a nearby hotel described how a man ran in to warn her about the knifeman.
He just said he was going berserk with the knife. You know, get the police, get the police. Very distraught, close to tears.
Neighbours said the dead couple only split up a few months ago. Today, their 3 newly orphaned children were being looked after by relations. Police are still waiting to interview several survivors of the stabbing, but they've confirmed in a statement that they're not looking for anyone else in connection with the attack.
The Prime Minister said the economy will move out of recession in the coming months and may already have started to do so. But in a radio interview, he refused to be specific about the timescale for the first signs of recovery.
They will depend upon the individual decisions of hundreds of thousands of companies, and we can only make a forecast and a judgment about that. My judgment is, although it is jagged and irregular, that in retrospect we will look back and say it has already started as we speak.
Labour's Gerald Kaufman said Mr Major's remarks showed he was a Tory leader who knows that he is beaten. People in Russia are preparing themselves for prices to be 6 times higher from tomorrow on everything from bus fares to bread. The plan to end state price fixing is part of Russian President Boris Yeltsin's reform programme. The price rises are going ahead in spite of food shortages in the cities.
It's an annual ritual for Muscovites, bringing in food from the country when there's a threat of winter shortages in the city. This year, the bundles coming off the train are bigger than ever. There is real uncertainty about whether families will be able to feed themselves after tomorrow's price rises. There was a foretaste of what they'll mean in the few shops open on New Year's Day. The imported meat here was already marked up at the higher prices. The tag on this Polish pork, the equivalent of 3 times the average monthly wage. Today, they simply looked at what is a rare luxury. Tomorrow, they'll have to pay between 3 and 6 times more than they're used to for basic goods. The judgment of this shopper, only millionaires can afford to pay these prices, and we don't have many of them. The theory is that the new prices will jolt the Soviet economy into life and stimulate production. But even within Boris Yeltsin's own government, there are doubts about whether it will work.
In theory, these reforms should bring the prosperity and should fill the shelves of the shops in Moscow and other cities of Russia. But in practice, I'm afraid that it will not happen in this way. And it's not by chance many people are calling tomorrow, the 2nd of January, as a Black Thursday in Russian history.
At Moscow's New Year celebrations last night, a small cluster of red flags provided a reminder of the economic system Russia has now abandoned. There's little regret for the passing of communist economics, but neither the people nor the government are really convinced that Russia is ready for a market economy. According to one estimate, the effect of such dramatic price rises, while wages remain static, will be to put 136 million people below the poverty line. So it's scarcely surprising that some members of Mr Yeltsin's team are extremely nervous about this experiment and fear there'll be social unrest before the month is out if it doesn't work. Edward Sturton, ITN, Moscow.
In Yugoslavia, the United Nations envoy Cyrus Vance said that both Serbia and Croatia had accepted a UN peacekeeping plan, which should lead to a peacekeeping force being allowed in. But there's been no sign of a let-up in the fighting today. Federal Army troops have attacked Zadar, Karlovac and Vinkovci. The civil war in El Salvador is ending after 12 years. The government and the left-wing National Liberation Front signed an agreement at the United Nations in New York. A ceasefire will start in a month. Anne Lucas at ITN reports.
The agreement was signed on the last day of Mr Perez de Cuellar's term as Secretary-General of the United Nations. He brought together President Alfredo Cristiani and left-wing rebel leaders to sign a ceasefire ending 12 years of civil war.
The agreements in itself, what they do is strengthen the political system in El Salvador, which is the democratic system.
As the news broke in the capital San Salvador, spontaneous celebrations spread through the streets. President Cristiani said it was not a victory for the government or the rebel forces. The winners were the Salvadoran people. The formal ceasefire comes into effect on February the 1st, ending a war that has claimed 75,000 lives. The United States backed the right-wing military junta, despite the notorious death squads, which murdered thousands of government opponents. But moments after the peace agreement was signed, a car bomb exploded in San Salvador. It's believed the target was a hotel used by foreign news agencies and journalists. No one was injured.
Finally, teenagers hoping to start a career in football will find it tougher than ever in 1992, as some clubs end the system of taking teenagers on YTS training schemes. Hard-pressed clubs are finding they can't even afford the £40 a week they pay their new young players.
For the YTS boys at Torquay, the schoolboy dream is coming true. This year, they're cleaning the first team's boots. Next year, they could be stepping into them. Lee Sharp is the club's best-known old boy. He came on the youth training scheme. Manchester United bought him for £200,000.
It was great for me. I mean, if they hadn't have had the youth development scheme down there, then no doubt I wouldn't have got took on and wouldn't be where I am today.
Good. But this year's YTS intake will be Torquay's last. The club says it's costing more than $50,000 a year to run the scheme. From next season, instead of more than a dozen trainees, they'll only take on 2 or 3 apprentices.
It's a luxury we can't afford. I think we need to revert to, we will revert to the old-fashioned apprenticeship schemes, where it's funded entirely by the club. Less boys, obviously emphasis on quality rather than quantity.
But quality players are a rare commodity. Torquay may end up missing out on another Lee Sharp.
I think it's sad, really, because every club's got to have a youth policy, and, you know, if we get rid of ours, you know, the club's not going to really bring any youth through. So, you know, it's going to cost them more money in the long run, I suppose.
The most famous product of the YTS scheme would no doubt have made it, whatever the odds. But for thousands of Gaza's young fans, it's their only hope of making the grade.
And that's it so far this evening. The main news from ITN tonight is at 8:30, when we'll also have a full roundup of today's sport. But from me, goodbye.
Good evening. Well, 1992 is off to a windy start. It's going to stay that way for a day or so yet, too, with more gales to come, especially up in the north and west. And that's where most of the rain will be tonight, the north and west of Scotland, I think, in for quite a soaking through tonight, but some rain turning up over Northern Ireland and the rest of Scotland. A mild night, but a very windy one. Gusts perhaps as strong as 70 miles per hour in parts of the north. Tomorrow, a lot of cloud around, as you can see. It may brighten up at times down the east and in the southeast later, and maybe, too, up in the far north of Scotland. Apart from that, a cloudy picture with patchy rain and drizzle, and another very windy day with gales around coasts and hills. Temperatures tomorrow, though, this is a bit of good news. It's a mild day tomorrow, again, as today. Temperatures around 10 or 11, typically. That's just into the 50s, but could be into 13, I think. In the sheltered eastern side, that's 55. But, of course, the wind, the main feature. Join me again later. Here's the summary.
Start off 92 in the best of company with Thames and Mr. Bean. Well, he's obviously had a rough night, but in Glasgow, nights are rougher.
You got a young guy called Alec Telfer working here. Aye. He hasn't shown up today. He's not going to show up. He was found dead this morning.
And at 10:15 with a comedy thriller, Case Closed.
May I take your order, please?
That's New Year's Day on Thames.
Now on Thames, live from Old Trafford, Manchester United versus Queen's Park Rangers.